This was at home, where I still live today. I thought that as long as I lived here, fearful experiences would not happen to me, because the place where I live now is not particularly interesting, and it's where my family has lived for generations. As of late, when I'm in the living room, I can hear a low female voice humming day and night. At first, the sound is so distant that you have to listen carefully to notice it. But as I leave it alone, it gets closer and closer. When I still let it alone, it gets closer so much that I don't have to focus on it. So I always try to repeat this special incantation that my grandma taught me when I recognized that voice. As I continue to chant the incantation, the voices gradually move away. Since then, in this living room, I can't even enjoy the TV. It is completely irregular when I start hearing the voice, and I have to be quick to recognize them and start casting spells. If the spell is cast too late, sometimes it even enters the room. Speaking of which, my favourite band's new album released the other day. My eyes were on the release date and I was already in a state of great excitement when I bought it at the store. I immediately went home and listened to it on my headphones, finished the whole thing, and was basking in the bliss. And then... A public high school in my hometown used to be a rough place, and the teacher committed suicide by jumping off the roof of the school. Because of that, the teachers became neurotic due to bullying. Since then, the door to the rooftop had been locked and absolutely impossible to enter. The stairs landing in front of that door was a perfect place to hide, and some students smoked cigarettes there. That day, my friend and I skipped the class and were smoking and talking on the front landing of the rooftop when we saw someone coming up the stairs from above. We hurriedly put out the cigarette and looked to see who the person coming up was. "What's the matter with you guys? Why aren't you guys in your class?" I was relieved. He was a janitor, a grey-haired old man. Well, we laughed it off and covered it up. "You guys want to go out on the roof?" Saying this, he took a bunch of keys from the pockets of his work pants. It was all ringed together like a prison key. I knew I'd be in trouble if they recognized my face and told my homeroom teacher. I said, "No, I have to go," and got up and ran down the stairs. At break, I told the guys in my class what had happened. My friend said, if I could get out on the roof, I would. So I searched all over the school after school, but that old man was nowhere to be found. I thought he had already left, so I checked with his teacher and was told that there was no such janitor. Sure, I see just one all the time, and he's about my uncle's age and not grey-haired. And one more thing. Though the rooftop door was locked and closed, apparently the key was lost over the decades. They didn't bother to renew the locks because they were already locked anyway. What was that old man? If we had opened the door. "You guys want to go out on the roof?" I shudder to think of those words of the old man. I know someone who can see something. The friend herself is kind of weird, in my opinion. Sometimes she tells me strange and eyebrow-raising stories. This is a story about when the friend was a fortune teller at a place. I was surprised. "You can tell fortunes?" She says, "It's easy. Just say what I see. I feel guilty charging money so easily." And then she says something so smooth that I felt like she was going to be offended. She was a fortune teller for a short time by a train station, dressed like one, with a crystal ball on a small desk. She bought a crystal ball by mail order. At first, no visitors came to her at all. But then perhaps, because of the relatively inexpensive admission fee of 500 yen, people who were just killing time started coming, here and there. She said, "The price should be quite reasonable. I'm sure my competitors will complain." I said, "Reasonable? Or, were you taking money to do it?" But the protest was passed over. Then, after a moment, she said with a sigh, "One of those customers came in who was a hell of a lot more than I thought he would be. When he sat down in front of me, I thought, I've undercharged him too much. I knew I had failed." I asked her, "How was it terrible? Were you cursed?" I asked. She said, What can I say? It was a man in a soggy suit, pale face, and a drunken walk, and his face wrinkled." I said, "You're very sick. You'd rather refer him to a hospital than tell his fortune." I had a bad feeling at this point. She said, "Perhaps not. He was already dead, and a hospital wouldn't have helped." And then she said something outrageous. I said, "What?" I couldn't help but let out a bare voice. Apparently, she said, she had done divination with a dead person. I thought she was making it up, but it sounded interesting, so I decided to listen to her. She continued her story calmly. The customer said something like this. He said, "Fortune teller, really look at me." I was totally puzzled, because I don't think you can see the future. I tactfully tried to see through the lie and said, "It's a little black joke, isn't it?" "Then did you tell him?" "You're already dead, you have no future." She replied flatly, "I was going to tell you, but I decided to take a look at it anyway." I was crushed. Looking at me, she said, "But I looked into my crystal ball and couldn't see anything." "That's because you bought the crystals by mail order, didn't you?" I asked. She shook her head and said, No, that thing is 5 normal people. Well, for simple fortune-telling level, I guess just a glass ball will be fine." "Really?" I thought and listened to the rest of the story. She said, "I had no choice. I was going to do a card reading, but I knew something was definitely going to turn out bad, so I decided not to." I replied, "I would want to get a Reaper's card or something." She said, "Well, something like that." So I was looking into my crystal ball and thinking, what am I going to do? I said, "So, you were looking into your crystal ball with a difficult face. It sounds like a good way to fool the customers." Then she said, "That's when I got the idea." She said something unclear. "Yeah, let's remind him of when he died." I said, Didn't you come up with a way to see it? I asked. She thought about it for a moment and then said, That would have been nice. But it's not good if he doesn't get himself to heaven, you know. It would be bad if you become an evil spirit or something. He was trying to trick me, so I asked, You just couldn't think of a way to see? Looking flustered, she said, No, not at all. Don't doubt it. Apparently, she had given up looking. Then she asked the ghost, How long have you been here? How did you get here? Where do you plan to go? She asked the questions. Then she found out the details quite easily. Apparently he was passing by here on his way to the office. The ghost said, I just can't cross the street at the light. I'm in a hurry. He looked troubled, she said. The ghost said with a sad expression on his face, I wanted to ask someone to do something about it, but no one turned to me. I knew that place. That side of the station. Was there some kind of accident there? She had already done her research and said, I looked it up later and found that there was a car accident about 2 months ago and a man died on his way to work. I said, I see, so what's going on? I asked. Then she gave me a surprising answer. She said, I said you don't have to cross at the light. I said you don't have to cross that traffic light. You don't have to go to the office. There was a flower under the traffic light there, so she said, Go there and touch the flower and say your name out loud. My eyes rolled back and I said, some kind of a spell? I asked. She said, well, something like that. I just figured those flowers were put there for that person. Curious about the ending, I said, so is he safe? It's kind of weird to be safe when he is dead. She smiled and said, yeah, he was at the traffic light and then he was gone. I even made a little offering. She has since bought new flowers, placed them there and prayed for them. She said, well, it's really not something I'm used to doing. I said, oh, totally. Why do you even want to do fortune telling? She said, isn't it kind of nice? A beautiful girl fortune teller? It's mysterious or something. And it's kind of cute, isn't it? Whether it's beautiful or not is not a matter of taste, but she is definitely not a girl. I stopped rushing into this and attacked my friend, who was in a good mood on another point. I said, I mean, you tried fortune telling once, but gave up, and you ended up letting me go to the Buddha normally, didn't you? Simple as he is, she was a little ticked off. So perhaps, reluctantly said, to tell you the truth, it's not that I didn't see it. I asked her with half sarcasm, thinking she's acting strong again. Well, that's great. How did you see that? And what the hell did you see in the dead man's future? She thought about something and eventually replied, I saw him directly. I don't want to do so as a dead person again. If I do it again, I might die. She looks regretful. It's to look deep into the eyes of a dead person, and I can't do it. And she also said this, I can't tell you what I saw, to be precise. I don't remember. I'm sure it was something I shouldn't remember. Something that no living person should know. I don't think words in a living world can describe it. An old friend concluded the story by saying it. Then she charged me for the day's drink, saying it was a lecture fee or something. I saw it all in this video, because it was so frustrating. Maybe I've been making too many scary videos lately, to. Or maybe I talked to her about it. Because something paranormal has been happening to me for some time. I'm a university student living in Tokyo, and one of my friends come from a rural village, and he told me a story. It is a seaside village, and for some reason, girls are more likely to be born there. I was not surprised by that, as some villages are so inclined to have twins. In fact, it was not. When the boy is born, there is a high possibility of having a deformed child. It's like they're strange in appearance or have a disease. Nowadays, with the development of medical technology, such incidents have decreased dramatically. But in the past, it was very frequent, he said. Once there were no boys left in the village, and if a wandering traveller was a man, the village seemed to become a one-night heaven. He said that they get the men drunk with alcohol and make them have children with some of the young women in the village. Afterwards, he was useless anymore. They kill him and dump him in a sea when he's drunk and sleeping. The deformed children were also killed and thrown into the sea. One day, finally, a monster began to emerge from the sea. A half-fish man-like monster that looks like a fish with human limbs attached. It comes out of the sea in the middle of the night and attacks villagers outside their houses. Wow, you ever seen one of those? He said, no, I haven't. But it exists. Absolutely. I wondered about him who showed unfounded confidence. So I asked him, if you say so, do you have any evidence to back it up? After a short pause, he replied, didn't make any offerings to the deformed children they killed. The first traveller was killed, and if the traveller's child was deformed, it was also killed. If you don't make any offerings, there's no way you could get rid of that bitterness. The guy said he'd never seen anything like it, but as he was talking, he was laughing, like he was making up something. My guess is that even if the probability of deformed children being born is reduced, they will still be born eventually. Maybe he saw a deformed child be killed and dumped. I heard later that they were told by the villagers to never go outside a house after 10 p.m. In addition, though I explained in this video that he came out of a rural village, to be precise, he said that his family escaped from the village together when he was in the upper grades of elementary school. If I wanted to ask, I might be able to find out where the village is. But I don't want to go there. And even though I like the occult, I don't want to experience it myself. So I have no way of knowing for sure. But I have a feeling they exist. At the end of that story, he said, the fish must have eaten the dead flesh of the deformed children and travellers. This was strangely scary. I knew he had seen it all before. It's not so scary, but listen to me. This is a story from when I was only 4 or 5 years old. My house at the time had a broken shower, and I used to visit the shower room in church with my mother. I was still very young, so I was in the shower with my mother. One day, bored with washing my body, I left the shower room alone without telling my mother and explored the church. I had never noticed it before, but there was an upstairs next to the shower room, and I was a little curious, so I climbed the stairs and found the rusty iron door on the top floor. I suddenly became curious about that door. There is a large keyhole directly under the doorknob. I don't remember why I decided to do it at the time, but I looked through the keyhole. I peeked for a while, but the other side was covered by something and I couldn't see it. What a ball, I thought, and looked up. Then I suddenly felt the presence of someone behind the door, and I was curious, so I peeked through the keyhole again. Then, in the dim light, I saw a rusty machine that I couldn't quite make out. I loved such machines so I was crazy about peering at them. Then, suddenly, I felt a presence behind the door and had a bad feeling. I looked away and backed away. And the next moment, the tip of flathead screwdriver was stuck out through the keyhole, again and again. I gasped and left there, too scared to even tell my mother. Some time later, as a child, I had forgotten about that crazy event at that place. One day, our family decided to move. After we cleaned out our house, we went to say hello to the church to thank them for all the help they had given us. I was into sketching at the time, and I brought the sketchbook and a set of pencil for drawing the church that had taken care of us before we moved away. As I was sketching the church in earnest, I remembered the keyhole in that door. But somehow I had forgotten that horror, so I took my sketchbook and pencil and went to look through the keyhole. I couldn't resist the urge to sketch the view behind the keyhole as well. I quickly looked through the keyhole and saw nothing on the other side, covered by something. I thought something was stuck in the keyhole, so I stuck a pencil into the keyhole and pried it loose. At that moment, behind the door, I was surprised by the scream and removed my hand from the pencil. The pencil remained in place, shivering, but eventually it fell on this side. A few inches from the tip of the pencil was broken off. I again said nothing to my mother. After that day, our family moved to the next state. Years later, as a student, I went to visit that town where I used to live. I visited first and foremost the church that had been my childhood home. I thought I would see some of my old acquaintances there, but against the odds, no one was there. No, there was a big guy doing something single-mindedly in front of a big tree behind the church. The moment I saw the man, memories of the past came back to me. He was the young man we called Frankenstein and feared. The large man had nearly transparent silver hair and rabbit red eyes. And now that I think about it, he may be an albino. And the big man was a terribly violent guy, unidentified figure who repeatedly broke into a basketball game, took things away and beat us up. The big man is right in front of me. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk to him or run away. He noticed me, stopped moving, and slowly turned around. One of his eyes were crushed. I had a rather unusual hobby. It was to go out on the roof of my house in the middle of the night and observe my city from there with telescopes. It is fun to observe a different, quieter city. I was thrilled to see large buildings in the distance, cabs carrying drunks up the hill, and dazzling vending machines standing alone in the distance. There is a long slope in front of my house that leads straight down towards my house. Therefore, if you look from the rooftop, you can see the entire slope from the front. I was looking through binoculars at a vending machine set up the side of the hill and saw a guy coming down from the top of the hill at a tremendous speed. What the hell was that? So I looked through my telescope and saw a naked, severely skinny, childlike guy running towards me at lightning speed, waving at me with a big smile on his face. The child was clearly aware of my presence. Eye contact was constant between us. For a while I looked on in amazement, but then I had a feeling that something very terrible was about to happen. So I hurried down the stairs and ran inside the house. I closed the door and locked it in a hurry. What the hell was that? While I was frightened and didn't know what to do, I heard him going up the stairs to the rooftop. Obviously, it's looking for me. I did nothing. I was confused. With both hands on the gun, I stood still in the middle of the living room, trying not to make a sound. After a while, I heard a sound coming down the stairs. I didn't know what to do anymore, and while I was rattling and shaking, I heard a messed up banging on the door. After that, the guy pushed the chime in my room messily. I can also hear him moaning through the door. My heart stopped for a moment, and I couldn't stop shaking all over my body. I stayed that way for a while, but after a few dozen seconds or so, the knocking, chiming and moaning stopped, and it became quiet. Still, of course, there's no way I could relax, and I remained stiff with my gun at the ready until dawn. Who the hell was that guy? I would never look through a telescope in the middle of the night again. For some reason, a colleague of mine, who is usually very friendly with me, stubbornly refuses to go to the beach with me. I asked him why, but my colleague didn't seem very willing to talk, so I gave him a drink, got him drunk, and then forced him to tell me. Here is what the colleague told me. However, it was not to the point, so I'm putting the story in perspective. When I was still a student, I went on a trip with a friend. As I recall, it was after the second term of college exams, so it was in the middle of winter. The trip was a casual one, just getting in a car with my friend's dog and driving around aimlessly. One day, while continuing such a journey, I could not even find a town where people might live, and by the time I managed to arrive at a seaside village where people might be living, the sun had already set. It was a small village, barely clinging to the sea between the mountains. By the time we found that little hamlet, the car we were in was running low on gas. We drove along the stretch of road along the coast looking for a gas station, which we soon found, but the store was already closed. We went around to the back of the gas station hoping there would be people there. Then I saw a big straw hat hanging on the door. I saw that straw hat hanging in the doorway, and thinking it was in the way, I moved it out of the way and rang the doorbell. I said through the doorway, "Excuse me, could you put some gas in the car?" There was a slight sign of someone from the doorway, but no answer. My friend also felt someone's presence and asked, "Are they ignoring me? That kind of pisses me off. Let's ring the doorbell again." I agreed and said, "Excuse me, I need to refuel." I called loudly and insistently, and the front door light came on and a figure appeared behind the glass door. The figure asked, "Who are you?" I replied, "I need gasoline." The figure replied immediately, "I'm off today." His voice was irritated. I persisted, saying, "I really want to refuel." But the shadow replied, "No, I can't." We gave up and went back to the car. My friend was a little irritated and said, "This is why the countryside is so bad. Let's stay in the car today," he suggested. There certainly seemed to be no other way, so we decided to stay in the car. As we drove around the village looking for a place to park our car, we noticed something strange. I noticed that not only that gas station, but all the stores and houses were unlit and their entrances were tightly closed. If I look closely, every house has a straw hat hanging on the front door, just like the gas station mentioned earlier. We were creeped out, but kept looking for a place to park the car, forcing ourselves to accept that it might be some kind of festival. When the wind from the sea was getting stronger, my friend pointed his finger. "How about over there?" The place he pointed to was at the base of a stone staircase that led straight from a small hut to the sea. It was a small parking lot, but the hedge seemed to shelter us from the sea breeze. We parked our car there. By then, it was dark, and there was nothing to do. We wrapped ourselves in blankets in the driver's seat and went straight to sleep. I wonder how many hours had passed. I woke up to the roar of a dog and noticed a strong fishy smell around me. My friend's dog continues to growl at the ocean, fangs bared. Normally, it is a quiet dog, but no matter how much I tried to calm it down, it just wouldn't calm down. Eventually, my friend woke up and looked beyond the darkness. The sea, illuminated by moonlight, was eerily too quiet, unlike a few moments earlier. I can see something groaning in the circle of the bleak concrete quay. "There's something in there," my friend whispered in a muffled voice. It looked at first like a thick pipe or log crawling out of the sea. The monster eventually seemed to be slowly making its way to land, thrashing about like a snake, but strangely enough, it made no sound. That alone is creepy enough, but the monster's body appears to be a mass of muffled black smoke, and I am not even sure if it has any substance. The more time passed, the worse the fishy smell became, to the point of nausea. The tip of the monster had crossed the coastal path to reach the house across the street, but its strange body had disappeared into the sea. Perhaps the monster's body is several hundred meters long. A monster that makes a gesture as if it were peering through the eaves of a private house. At the tip of the creature definitely has a face, although it was not clearly visible. My friend and I were not so cowards, but the sight of the creature was so horrifying that we were unable to move at the first glance. I experienced for the first time the sensation of having my heart grabbed. The monster seemed to be staring at the straw hat hanging in the doorway, but eventually it moved slowly and headed for the next house. "Hey, drive the car." My friend's trembling voice brought me back to myself. I managed to raise my motionless arm and turn the car's engine key, and the sound of the engine echoed in the silent surroundings. The monster reacts to the sound and slowly turns around. Oh no, I don't know what that was, but I had a gut feeling that we shouldn't make eye contact with it. I broke the car's rearview mirror, folded up the side mirrors and stared only ahead and stepped on the gas pedal as hard as I could. The dog started barking like crazy in the back seat, hissing like an asthmatic, and then there was a thud and a fall. In response to the sound, my friend, who turned around unexpectedly, froze with a gasp. I said, "Idiot, don't turn around." I yelled at my friend and grabbed his arm and pulled him back forward. My friend's face was drawn and crumpled and his eyes were completely unfocused. I am ashamed to say that I kept stepping on the gas pedal, crying out in strange terror. Then we kept driving until we ran out of gas over the pass and eventually into the morning. My friend was taken to a nearby hospital and nearly passed out and laid in bed with a high fever for about a week. After that, my friend recovered, but he became violently emotionally unstable. When I mentioned the incident, so he graduated from college without knowing what he saw when he looked back. I have not seen my friend since then. And my friend's dog, since then, has become violently mad and repeatedly tries to bite anyone. It blows bubbles and collapses. A friend who couldn't stand the sight of it apparently euthanized his dog. I don't know what that was all about in the end, and I don't want to know. Anyway, I'm not going near the ocean anymore. I still remember the pale expression on my friend's face when he finished that story.